to adopt them.
My Lords, I really appreciated the contribution by the Noble Baroness Lady Ritchie of Downpatrick, because she asked a lot of questions about this group of amendments, and although I might be motivated by different reasons, I think that I found it difficult to fully understand all of the impact of these amendments, so I want to ask a set of questions as well. In the bill, harm is defined as physical and psychological harm, and there is no further explanation. I can understand the frustration with that and the attempts at, therefore, using this, what's described as the widely understood and used 4 Cs of online risk to children. I mean, it was widely understood and used, I mean, not widely understood by me, and I've kind of ploughed my way through it, so I might well have misunderstood lots in it. But I do want to look at and maybe challenge some of the contents of this. I was glad, by the way, for a recognition in Amendment 20 that the level of risk of harm to different age groups was recognised. I think that that's something that concerns me all the time when we talk about children and young people, and then end up behaving or treating 4-year-olds and 14-year-olds or 18-year-olds. So I was glad that that was there, and I hope that will be something we'll look at again in the future. I really wanted to concentrate on Amendment 93, I think, and reflect more generally on the problem of a definition or a lack of definition of harm in the bill, and make some comments on it. All the time that we've been considering, for the last several years that we've been considering bringing this bill to this House and to Parliament, I've been worried about the definition of harm in terms of psychological harm. Largely because this is a category that has become ever expansive in our therapeutic age and quite subjective, and is a matter of some discussion and quite detailed work by psychologists and professionals who worry that there's an expanding concept creep of what's considered harmful and what psychological harm really means. And an illustration of it recently, when I was speaking to a group of sixth formers that I'd been invited to speak to, and I was discussing things like trigger warning and so on, and they were saying, well, you've got to understand what it's like, and they were kind of 16-year-olds, you've got to understand what it's like when we encounter certain material, it makes us have PTSD. And I was thinking, no, it doesn't really, does it? I mean, it's post-traumatic stress disorder is something that you might well gain if you've been in the middle of a war zone. And in fact, the whole concept of triggering came from, psychological and medical insights from the First World War, when you can understand if you hear a car backfiring and you think it's somebody shooting you. But the idea that you will have trigger warnings on great works of literature, and if you don't, that this will lead to PTSD. And I mean, I'm not being glib, because actually there's a really expanded and elastic and pathologized view of harm that's being used quite cavalierly and casually, actually often by and in relation to young people and protecting them. And it's routinely used to close down speech, actually, and as part of the cancel culture wars, which, as you know, I'm kind of interested in. I thought as well, but I suppose what I mean is that is there not a danger that just this concept of harm is not as obvious as we think it would be, and that the psychological harm issue makes it even more complicated, and so on. The other thing is that in the explanation, I think, on Amendment 93, it says that the harms in this schedule are not a non-exhaustive list of categories. The categories might be relevant. And I reflected that, as with the discussion on whose judgment decides on the threshold for removing illegal material, I think that harmful is even more tricky for the young, as I've already said, in relation to psychological harm. But I was also reminded of that when the Noble Baroness Kidron complained that what she considered to be obviously and self-evidently harmful, Meta didn't. And I just wondered whether, that's just meta, or whether views will differ when it comes. Yes.
If you just wait for a second to say that the court found that social media contributed. I won't do a direct quote, but to the death of Molly Russell. So I don't think it's my judgment, but it was the court's judgment that Meta's position was indefensible.
Understand that, and I was more making the point that there will be disagreements and judgments. In that instance, it was resolved by a court. We're talking about a situation here where I'm not sure how the judgment's made. That's the point I'm making. So the reason I'm giving it is because there are in these amendments lists of particular harms that are considered to be, self-harm, and a variety of harms are named, and I wanted to just use some counter examples of what I consider to be harms. So, for example, I have, maybe it's the algorithms I'm on, but I've been inundated by algorithmic adverts for naked education on Channel 4. I happen to think that that programme is irresponsible. Naked adults, and I've watched them, by the way, rather than just me taking this from a headline. I think that Channel 4 posing this as an educational programme with naked adults and children, saying that it's introducing children to the naked body and so on. I mean, what I'm saying is I think that's harmful for children, right? I don't think it should be on the television, but it's advertised on social media, and I've seen that quite a lot. I think that the greatest example of self-harm that I think we encounter at the present time are teenagers in particular, but some younger than teenagers, predominantly young women who are gender dysphoric, who I think are being affirmed by adults as a kind of social contagion into taking body-changing and damaging hormones and self-mutilation, whether it's breast binding or double mastectomies, and they're being advertised and praised by adults. I think that's incredible harmful for young people, and it's reflected online a lot because a lot of this is discussed or advertised or promoted online. And I'm saying that because I'm asking in a way, and that's why it relates to the earlier contributions, is should those be listed in the harms, the obvious harms? I know that many people in this House, or there's not many people in this House now, but if there were many more people in this House, they would object to what I'm saying, say that's not harmful at all. What's harmful is what you're saying, Baroness Fox, because you're causing psychological harm to all those young people by being transphobic. And I'm raising these things because I think that we know that we all agree, rather, that there is a consensus on what is harmful material online for young people, and I'm suggesting is at least not that straightforward. And just one thing, just because I was actually genuinely wondering about it, was one of the queries was that it says that the target any platform for posting the bill should target any platform that posts links to or encourages child users to seek out dangerous or illegal activities. And obviously illegal activities, I understand. Just on the dangerous activities, it's probably just because I've spent too much time with the young people who spend the whole time looking at things like extreme sports, mountain climbing, and so on, and they are dangerous. I assume that's not what we mean, but that's what I worry about, these unintended consequences, things being banned or misinterpreted in that way.
Could I just briefly respond to the noble